3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Lots to get to on today's program. College football season not done yet, but what might future seasons look like? A little bit later on, Elijah and I are going to take, maybe not a deep dive, but more than a shallow dive. What's the middle? A moderate dive?
It's the shortest amount of dive you could actually dive into a pool in, because if it's like
without getting hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Because there are the signs of the pool that say, "Hey, no diving," because diving in a 3-foot pool is kind of dumb. No, it's dangerous.
It's very foolish. Yeah, but we'll take a look at some potential. Some we've already discussed, but
like an 8-foot pool. Others
that have come up of late from one really well-respected college football writer. I think the vast majority of it could work. So that's coming up for you a little bit later on. Before that, bottom of this hour, our good friend Alan Cole, GamecockScoop.com, the Rivals Network covering Carolina, will join us. Alan was on hand for the basketball games over at the Hump this weekend. We'll get into a little off-season football with him too. But Elijah, speaking of deep dives, has been taking a really good look at what's going on with Carolina's games this week. First against Alabama tomorrow night. Auburn plays tonight, by the way. So as if Auburn needed any additional advantages before they come to Columbia this Saturday, they get an extra day of rest. They'll be in Austin tonight. So there's a lot of travel for them this week. But again, I'm really not kidding when I say if you told Bruce Pearl, hey, Bruce, you can have the best roster in the country, and he may, but you can't play any home games. Bruce would be like, we're still going to win 25.
Oh, yeah.
Minimum.
Oh, and he'd get sweaty because he'd be getting so fired up talking about how they're going to do it.
In fact, they'd probably win by more. Right?
Probably. This is really the best team in college basketball in terms of most complete, in terms of probably the hardest to stop with the actions they do, and their size, their depth, their athleticism. They have the best player in the country right now. If we ended the season today and held a vote for the Wooden Award, Janiah Broome would win it running away.
So you're telling me already, as a Wooden voter, that I'll be voting for him?
I will tell you right now.
They give me 10 on that. It's not like the Heisman where they get 10. 3. I get 10, and then you get like 10 points for first and so on.
I get 5 for the Robertson. But, if the season ended right now, that's where my vote's going.
Okay. All right.
As of now. Cooper Flagg is doing pretty well.
It's technically the last day of the first week of January, so we still have some time.
Yes.
Yeah. But you've been looking at Alabama, who's also a very, very legitimate national title contender.
Still a team that has one of the 5 best offenses in college basketball.
And they're both so well coached.
Oh, absolutely.
So well coached. So we'll touch on some of those things, get into a little football for you. Yesterday, a big pickup on the offensive line. I know this week there's a pretty big tailback portal recruit on campus looking around, but looking at some big schools. So there's a good sales job to be done, and we know Shane and the crew can recruit. So and I do think listen. You and I talked this morning about this. When it comes to a new tailback at South Carolina, you're going to go get one. All right, you're going to sign a running back out of the portal. You're not going to sign another Rocket Sanders out of the portal.
Mm-hmm.
That was a unique situation, I think. Because of his injury. Because let's face it, he may still have transferred. I don't know. But I think the injury and just the kind of, dare I say, malaise that had fallen over Fayetteville, so maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But considering how good he was and what we saw from him again, I don't know that you should expect that if you're a Carolina fan. I don't even know if there's a Rocket Sanders out there, to be honest with you. Somebody that's been,
not someone with that type of pedigree already.
That's already been an all-SEC performer, right? But I know the kid from Utah State, and forgive me,
Russell Faison.
Thank you.
Faison.
I knew it was Faison because I even looked to see, wonder if he's any kin to Rashad Faison, who played here, many years ago. He's not. At least the best I could tell.
Kid, Russell Faison.
I don't
pretty
know.
good.
But 1,100 something yards and
smidge over 1,100. Yeah.
Had
almost 6 a carry.
A couple dozen catches. So, that's good. But we'll get into to all those things with Alan coming up bottom of the 4 o'clock hour. The voice of the Gamecocks, our good friend Derek Scott, will join us with his firsthand account of what he saw on Saturday, where his biggest concerns are. And again, I've made a note here on my rundown today. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? I certainly hope so, for the sake of Carolina basketball and Lamont Paris and these players. You and I think, touched on maybe the biggest void that still needs to be filled, and I don't know if you do it this year, and it's the loss, in no particular order, of Talon Cooper and Michi Johnson, both their basketball ability and their leadership ability. There are intangibles with those two guys that are gone too, not just their on-court abilities. And I've just not seen anything yet that tells me, oh, no, don't worry. After 4 or 5 conference games, it's going to come up, that Jamari's going to get it done. Jacoby's going to get, I'm not, not seeing that as of yet. So where else can you find those places to fill that void? But what does Derek think? Derek's around him at practice, and I know there are things that he may be privy to that he is not able to share publicly, but as best he can, we'll grill him today.
Yeah, I mean that's like what's the one thing that every team that makes a run in March has to have? You have to have a guard that can make plays.
Yeah,
and I just don't think we've seen that to the level that's adequate for this team this year. Someone's got to be able to do that. That's going to have to change.
I know a lot of people, look, Talon obviously was done eligibility-wise, and I know a lot of people were bummed that Michi, but I think Michi really wanted that opportunity to go back home. And in today's world, you can. It's hard to fault somebody for that. He didn't, I don't think, he didn't leave because it was a, quote, better offer or anything like that. I mean, could you have found a way? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But we know what his affinity for Ohio State is as an Ohio kid. Mm-hmm. So I can't really go, yeah, you shouldn't have lost that one. I get it. If it had been Wyoming or something.
Right. Then you're asking questions.
Yeah, or whatever, right? Even maybe Illinois maybe not Illinois. Purdue or something. Illinois is really good.
Yeah, I wonder why that school is in the forefront of everybody.
Or Purdue, of course I can't. It's hard. Give me somebody in the Rutgers. There we go. Rutgers. There's too many good schools in the Big Ten, man.
Good basketball league.
It is. So we'll touch on those things for you. Some more NFL news that's out there. Rand Carthon, the GM of the Titans, fired today, but they're going to keep their head coach. A lot of people in Nashville with mixed results on this one. I know Teron Davenport, who we've had on the program, and somebody you know really well, seemed a little taken by this. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of his tweets, and I'm paraphrasing, said, boy, the things that Amy Adams and the team president, I forget his name, said they're looking for in a GM and resume-wise sounds just like all the things they said the last guy had when they hired him just 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, there obviously could be other things there. The reason I bring that up is only because the Tennessee Titans have the first pick in the draft. I've already made my thoughts on this known. If I'm them, I am trading this pick. Now, I'm not saying that yet, obviously, because you got to wait. And if you do think Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward are the guys for you, one of them, then have at it. Or if there is someone else. You made it clear to me yesterday that the folks in Nashville do not believe Will Levis is going to be the solution, even if somebody else comes in to better coach him or to put more talent around him, that he's just not that guy. And that's fine. My thing is, Elijah, and I'm serious about this because we're seeing it unfold with guys like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, who we've been talking about. Is there somebody out there, and I think the answer is yes. I'm not necessarily sure who it is right now, but is there somebody you can go get right now that's been in the league a little bit that you could make a deal for? Is there another Sam Darnold out there? Heck, is it Sam Darnold? I mean, we were talking about
Sam
that.
Darnold's
He's going to be available.
Yeah,
he's going to be available,
barring a franchise tagging.
And I was telling you, I was listening to a little bit of Dan Patrick this morning, and he was talking to Ian Rappaport about some of this. And then and then there was a caller that said they should just tag, or they should get Aaron Rodgers and just tell Darnold to take a hike. And Dan was like, no. You.
How would you downgrade at quarterback?
Right. You either tag Darnold.
That's a hell of a sentence.
And
I thought I'd say.
You tag Darnold, but maybe with the non-exclusive tag so that he can go. And you tell him in a good way, like, hey, the tag's going to pay you a lot of money.
It's fair market value with the tag.
Because what is it? It's like the average number of the top 4 or 5 at your position. Is that right?
Yeah, he'll more than likely get I believe 35.
I was going to say it's going to be 30.
It's north of 30.
Yeah, it's let's just say 30 for the sake of the discussion. That's a lot of money.
Because it was like 27 and a half a couple of years ago.
Because Cousins kept getting the tag, right? That dude.
He did. Oh, and trust me, working sports talk radio in a year where Ryan Tannehill had an expiring contract. Yeah, we got really familiar with what that franchise tag number was going to be.
But I see the Titans as a team that would be. I'm just not in love with this quarterback class. I mean, who else we got? Dylan Gabriel? No.
Carson Beck.
No.
Even if Quinn Ewers opted in to being in the NFL draft, that's another quarterback with reasonably high upside, but there was a lot of interceptions. I mean, Shedeur and Cam Ward are really the only two that I've seen mocked in the first round.
I like Ward a lot. I do. I think the right offense in the NFL suits him because that kid can spin it.
Yeah, he absolutely can.
He can spin it. But just like a lot of these guys these days, what's around him? And, it just feels to me, you check me where I'm wrong here, okay? It has long felt to me that the Tennessee Titans, and I don't mean this in a bad way, the Tennessee Titans more often than not have been a very vanilla football team, a very boring, not boring, but when Vrabel was there at their best even, it's, hey, we're going to run and we're going to stop you.
Not attractive to the casual fan.
Yeah. For me as like an English soccer fan, it's kind of like, like Stoke or Everton or Burnley. They're gonna pack it in on defense.
Say, a bus
park
parking.
the bus.
Yeah.
We're gonna run a lot of clock, and we'll hit you with a big play somewhere. Like in soccer, they want to do a counterattack. They'll hit you with a big play somewhere when you least expect it. But if we win 13-10, cool, because we won.
Yep.
And I think that's what the Titans have long been. The days they wore those Oilers uniforms the other day, but Warren Moon ain't walking through that door.
No, not even Steve McNair.
So, who could spin it for a bit?
And even then, they ran the ball with Eddie George 40 times a game.
Well, because you had Eddie George. Or even going back to when they had Earl Campbell. And Earl Campbell ain't walking through that door. But if he did, that'd be awesome.
I mean, that would be
technology
that if that exists.
1980s, early 80s Earl Campbell. Not, if Earl's coming in now at like 60.
I have a feeling that would not work out very well.
Not as well as you would like it to.
His knees aren't the same.
So we'll touch on all those things for you, too. I also saw, not that I'm going to dwell on this, so I'll just say it real quick. Oh, so now the Oakland A's, or whatever the heck they're called, started to spend money.
The Athletics of something. Kinda.
It's just a big middle finger to their fan base.
Well, especially, they just had the biggest free agent signing in the franchise's history for Luis Severino.
Right.
That's who you broke the bank for the first time.
And now they're doing it. Yeah. It's
for the first time since 2003.
Big middle finger. Come back on the other side before we talk more hoops with Alan. Steve Spurrier has weighed in on the college football playoff selection process. I like what he said, except that I don't know what it means. I'll see if Elijah can help me decipher it when the postgame show returns. How's your yard look with all these leaves blowing around? Even if most of the leaves have fallen out of the trees by now, you're still doing some yard work, right? And you're like, man, I got to get out there with a rake again and do this. No, stop by Cato's, all right? See the latest in blowers. See the latest in battery-powered blowers that can get the job done just as quickly as gas-powered, but you don't have to worry about all that, all right? You charge the thing up, you get out there, you get it done. It's that simple, all right? These new Toros, I'm getting one here soon. And, in fact, I really should have gone last week, I'll be honest with you, but I was busy. But I'm going. And because the one that Ben and Matt showed me when we were over there a couple weeks ago, absolutely fantastic. Whether you cut your own backyard or clean your own backyard or you do it for a living, the latest technology will get it done quicker, better, and you'll be happy. Cato's, 4012 West Beltline Boulevard, and always online at catospowerequipment.com. T- 20 minutes after 3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon.
Wow, you're still laughing, Jay Phillips. You must have found something really funny on the internet.
All right, so I was going to talk about this Steve Spurrier thing, and we are going to. It just may have to get postponed for a few minutes.
Well, because it's not as funny as what you found.
Many of you have heard of the Twitter feed and the website Message Board Geniuses. This is a site that's been around for years.
Appropriately named.
They scour the message boards of college athletics.
They do it so you don't have to.
Yeah, and they really mine for the best. And as you can imagine, it's the opposite that they're going for. And I just saw this one. And yes, it's an in-state one. And this is serious. This is serious. Message Board Geniuses says, look, now this is what they say, and then they post the message board screenshot, okay? So, and clearly this is all what I'm getting ready to read you from the Message Board Genius people. The one sentence is obviously tongue-in-cheek. Then I'll read you why. Look for Nick Saban to be the next defensive coordinator at Clemson. That's the post for Message Board Geniuses. Then they give you the post on the message board.
Well, I'll tell you what I won't be looking for.
So this fan, my instincts just keep bringing me back to Nikki. They're tight. I know, sounds crazy. But who else would honestly elicit an eye roll from David? He's a DB coach who is great friends with Dabo and could easily fill his own staff. I can't imagine he actually enjoys his game day job nearly as much as coaching defense somewhere. He still has a few good years left at Clemson. A few good years left, and Clemson, D.C. is the perfect, all caps, low-stakes job for him to enjoy a life on the lake while being able to continue doing what he loves, teaching elite defense. Not to mention, Clemson has a good track record with player retention right now, something that would factor in majorly for him. Could it be? Question mark. No.
I'll answer this very quickly. No.
I mean, it's fun to think about for like 2 seconds, but to take this and put it, I don't care who you pull for. Come on, man.
This is one of the best message board genius finds in a long time.
I just reposted it and said this may be a top 5 all-timer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this isn't even delusion. At this point, this is just like, I almost put a picture of Kristen Bell going like, "Aw."
I mean, this is delusional enough to make Texags blush.
I mean,
and that's usually where the majority of the bat bleep crazy ones come from.
I can't imagine he actually enjoys his game day job nearly as much as coaching defense somewhere. Bro, if he wanted to be coaching,
he'll be coaching.
Well, and he wouldn't have. We've already spent too much time explaining why this is dumb, right?
Yes.
But hey, you know what?
Because our audience has active brain cells of their own that understand that the percentage of this happening is the same percentage of getting mauled by a polar bear and a regular bear in the same day in Columbia, South Carolina specifically.
Yeah.
Sure, it might not be completely zero, but it's as close to zero as possible.
Yeah.
That would require bringing a polar bear to.
I was going to say, I think because
there are a lot of external factors that also are very unlikely to have to happen for that to happen. It's not impossible,
right?
The same way that's not impossible, but
yeah, we still have a grizzly bear over at the zoo, right? We don't have the polar bear anymore. I think he passed on a couple years back.
Oh, rest in peace. I did not know that they even had a polar bear.
Yeah, it's been a while. And I always, even when I was a little kid, I was like, man, this guy cannot be having fun.
No, absolutely not.
But I think they kept the water really cold.
Or enough Coca-Cola to keep them happy.
That's right.
They love those.
Or ices.
Ices.
Because Icy Bear is a polar bear.
Ices, yeah. I mean, you have to make the deal sweet for him. A lot sweeter than what it would take to get Nick Saban to be the defensive coordinator at Clemson.
But I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this this is not going to happen, and I'm probably even going to go out on a second limb and say that Dabo's not going to pick up the phone and call Nick Saban and see if he has any interest in the Clemson defensive coordinator job.
I always love the people that are like, you got to at least make the call
at least make him say no. I'll do it. I'll do it for you.
No. No, you don't have to make the call. You really don't.
It's not happening.
The good Lord gave you 24 hours in a day to do as much as you can with it.
Yeah.
Why waste any of that time for something that is a foregone conclusion? No, you don't have to make the call. You really don't.
If I may, and I say I'm being serious for a second, if I may, I think actually Nick really is enjoying game day quite
It
well,
looks like he's
actually.
having fun.
Yeah, I think he actually does like it a lot. He's doing commercials. He and Dion are having fun. He's doing. I
Having
think
fun with Timothy Chalamet.
I think
Ball
his
knower.
is it Verbo? Is that which one he's doing them for?
Yeah, he's doing Verbo commercial.
I think those are brilliant, man. No showers more than 5 minutes. No swimming. No
This
fun.
ain't a spa.
Yeah, no fun. There's a grill out there. You can't use it. Like those are great. Yeah, it's 2:55. Yeah, our reservation begins at 3. I know. Like those are great.
Those are good. They're really
So
good.
he's
They're
having
well
fun.
done.
I think Nick Saban's actually having a lot of fun. I do.
And for the guy who claimed that he just can't handle all the BS that's going on in college football anymore, you think he wants to hop in for more BS?
Yeah, no.
Absolutely not.
He's good. But it's as my mama would have said, it's sweet that you think that, and I appreciate you.
Yeah. Even I have pie in the sky dreams sometimes.
Well, that's why I said
And it's fun. It's very fun to engage in that type of thought.
I was looking for a GIF, as the kids say. I think GIF. You say GIF or GIF?
I think it's Jiff.
I don't know. Either way, like I said, I found one that I thought at first would be more apropos, and it was Kristen Bell like going, "Aw," and then I thought, "Nah, let's find something else." So now I have one of Michael. I have one of Michael Che, kind of rolling his eyes.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good go-to.
So there you go. So Clemson fans, and I know most of you probably didn't even think about that one. Clemson's going to get a fine defensive coordinator. I got zero issue over that. I think Clemson will go north of $2 million for their next coordinator, unless Dabo really thinks he can get one for less.
I don't think money's going to be an issue. I think they're willing to commit that money to a DC.
I mean, even when Venables left, he was making over 2, right?
I don't know if he was making over 2.
I don't know. But I mean, he was handsomely paid.
Because
And
Blake
that was-
Baker at LSU reset the market at a
2.3,
smidge
2.5?
2, yeah.
I don't know, but he was. I mean, Brent. I mean, the point being, they'll pay somebody, but it will not be Nick Saban.
No. And I will even go out. I'll be nice. I'll even go out on a limb and say they knock the hire out.
I tell you what,
that's an attractive position.
I tell you what, I am so confident that it won't be Nick Saban that if it is Nick Saban, I will do everything on the Bill Gunner wheel of horror or whatever he calls it. Not just one. I won't just spin it one time. I'll do all of them.
There's one that says Cat in the Hat. I'm really curious as to what that entails.
That means I think for Bill, I think you put a cat
Intern
in
for
your
a
hat.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
See one that says
Brian's Pizza.
That's not punishment.
I don't know. Unless
You know, we need.
I don't know.
I'm going to take ownership of that board.
defend soccer goal, intern for a day, walk the state house. I mean, it's right there. So I don't know what that means exactly. And trust me, I've been over every inch of the state house.
So you got to make some of this a little spicier.
Musical
This is
instrument,
this is
hot
way too
yoga with
soft.
Kindle. Bill runs the board. Again, I'll even run the board. The station will sound like crap, but I'll run the board.
That's honestly probably the thing that's the scariest idea. To
Participate in a 5K and do some kind of exercise class with Jen. I'll do them all if Nick Saban becomes Clemson's DC. So y'all have me on record. In the meantime, we'll talk some Carolina hoops, a little offseason football as well. Our buddy Alan Cole will join us, GamecockScoop.com, when the postgame show returns. Time to talk a little Carolina hoops, maybe get a little off-season football in if we get the opportunity here as time permits. Our buddy Alan Cole joining us, GamecockScoop.com. Happy New Year, sir. I can say that for a while longer.
You can. Happy New Year to you, too. I don't know when the cutoff is, but we're still within a week, so I think you're good.
April?
Okay.
Yep.
April, yeah. I mean, if you get a Happy New Year from Jay Phillips in April.
If I haven't spoken to you, and then I'm going to say Happy New Year. I'm a good and caring person. So that's what I do.
Appreciate that.
Unlike Elijah, who basically, like, if it's January 3rd and you say Happy New Year, he's going to punch you in the throat.
If you say Happy New Year to me in April, I want to say, oh, thanks, Jay. Happy quarter year to you, too.
That's right. Something like that. Alan, maybe not a great start, though, to the new year for Carolina men's basketball. In fact, it was far from it. And now all you get for your reward for having been beaten by 35 points on the road is to host two of the best teams in the country and maybe the best team in the country later this week. But we'll start with Alabama tomorrow night here at home. What, looking back at last year and what maybe some had as expectation this year, where's the biggest hole in your estimation for what this team has to do if they want to get anywhere close to the NCAAs?
I think it all starts at the tip of the spear. We talked about point guard play a lot in college basketball, and look, it's kind of unfortunate the way it broke, but I think you have enough of a sample size at this point to say Jamari Thomas is just not what Talon Cooper was at either end of the floor. He's not really a threat to shoot from deep right now with the way he's going. He's nowhere near as good of a passer as Cooper was. Defense don't have to key in on him. They can key in on the post players. You see how, ineffective Colin Murray-Boyles and Nick Pringle were on Saturday at Mississippi State. I'm far from putting it on one player, but I think we all would agree that point guard play is kind of where it starts in college basketball, and they just took a step back in that department this year.
Yeah, and then I think there's some things. The Mississippi State game, I think, highlighted a lot of things, and I think it provided a really good blueprint on how teams should be able to guard Colin Murray-Boyles, because the offense is going to and should run through him because that is your best player. It's your best shot creator. It's your best scorer. And Mississippi State really cut off, 2/3 of the floor and made him kind of operate in a phone booth for a lot of that game. But how much of that do you think we're going to see from teams like Alabama and Auburn here this week?
I think you're going to see it until you can prove you can hit some jump shots. Miles Studi went off against Clemson, but he hasn't had a good year in general. I already talked about Jamari Thomas. You're still waiting for Zach Davis and Jacoby Wright to get it moving from the perimeter. And until you have some guys who can space the floor by hitting a jump shot, I think teams are going to absolutely just crash the paint on Colin and on Nick Pringle to a certain extent and just kind of dare you to beat them for three, which South Carolina was 2 for 19 from there on Saturday.
Alan, you mentioned that Clemson game, and I thought South Carolina, played well that night. What can they take from? And I don't know how good Clemson really is. I think Clemson is good, and they were favored to come in and win that game. They're doing all right so far in conference play. In fact, they're 4-0 in conference play. Are there things that Lamont can pull from that and show his guys? What are you hearing? I mean, because look, the other day. They were just never in that game at all. I mean, from tip to buzzer, there was no chance. We know this team can be better than that. So is using the Clemson game any kind of motivation at this point?
I don't know about motivation, but I think it just kind of goes to what I just said. Like, what did you do against Clemson you haven't done most of the year? You hit some outside shots, and I'm not saying it's as simple as take 33s and you might hit 10 or 12 of them on a night and win the game, but you at least need a threat of some outside shooting because you run an inside-out offense. You ideally, as Elijah was saying, would have your post players facilitating things, and that only works if the guys in the perimeter at least are a threat to score. And that's not as easy as pushing a button. You can't just tell them to make shots, but I think you talk about they're better than 35-point loss to Mississippi State, and I agree. That was as bad as they played all year on Saturday. But the way to kind of close that gap is you've got to hit some shots. And the percentages, I think, are going to even out a little bit. But I don't know if it's going to be enough this week specifically against, like you said, 2 of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country.
Yeah, it's tough sledding on that front. But, the game after, the next day, women played Mississippi State, and that didn't look very good for about a quarter. But then, they kind of pressed their on switch, and then it was a beatdown after that. And unfortunately, it came at the expense of losing Ashlyn Watkins at a certain point in that game. So what are you kind of hearing on the injury front there for Ashlyn in terms of the feel that of its seriousness? And then what did you kind of take away from how this team was able to kind of flip that switch and seemingly be able to turn it on out of nowhere and then have another comfortable conference win on the road?
Yeah, first of all, on Ashland, I don't think it's as bad as it looked. I think I speak for probably everyone when you saw that, the way she reacted, her face, she carried off the court, that it looked season-ending. I don't think it is. Her dad made a Facebook post yesterday that said she just tweaked something. I've heard from other people in the last day that said something similar. I don't know what the immediate turnaround time is going to be, but I do think this team's getting healthier just because the Watkins thing wasn't as bad as you thought. Maddie McDaniel and Sakima Walker were both back at practice today before a game Thursday against A&M, and then obviously the big one Sunday against Texas. As for the game itself, I think Tessa Johnson's driving the bus. We've talked before, Elijah, you and me, about getting her the ball more, her usage rate, but you saw the game change when she's on the floor. She's kind of just good at everything. You saw the defense was better. They were getting beat off the dribble that first quarter. That didn't happen as much. Shot the ball well, drove the ball well. I know Dawn's not going to change her starting lineup. She was asked about that Sunday. She's not going to bench maybe a senior like a Bree Hall for Tessa Johnson, but I think you got to get some of these bench players. Tessa Johnson, I thought Fulwiley's played better the last two games, defensively better on Sunday. I think you can spread the minutes out a little more, and especially if you get Maddie McDaniel back healthy, you can really have a guard rotation going again.
Alan Cole with us, GamecockScoop.com. I'm glad you brought up Tessa because I'm going to now ask you a two-part question, and it's going to blend both teams, okay, the men and the women. But I think Tessa's a good example here. Maybe not. Just hear me out. Tessa's usage, Morris Ugasuk. You got to find some things, what can be done differently? I'm not saying Morris is going to be the end-all, be-all. And again, in a relative sense, Tessa certainly is a more heralded player, but can they become bigger factors? And I know you just kind of answered it when you said maybe Tessa doesn't enter the lineup. Might Lamont be looking at something different at some point in the not-too-distant future?
I think he has to. We talked about this on Saturday, just those of us who were in Starkville, but you've gotten off to so many slow starts this year. It wasn't just this Saturday where you couldn't dig out of it, but you were trailing at halftime to Radford, to Presbyterian, to East Carolina. Mercer was able to hang in the game with you for a while. This team is just not quick out of the blocks in general, and I think a lot of that does come back to the five you have on the floor to start the game. And going back to my last answer, who can space the floor, who can hit a jump shot? Morris Ugasuk's shooting pretty well right now. So whether it's him actually on the floor to start the game or just playing 25 minutes and playing a starter minutes off the bench, I think he's a guy you got to try to get on there to kickstart this offense a little bit.
And he is. You make a good point that he's playing half the game. So I get that. He's shooting, a solid 30+% from three. He's certainly beefed up. Again, this is more of an opinion question, but I feel like maybe inserting him into the lineup, I don't want to say sends a message or creates a different kind of competition, but it's something, and I don't know if that's where they are at this point, or if you let these performances against these two amazing teams this week further determine what happens. But if you're in an 0-3 hole and you're just showing yourselves to be not at all competitive, Alan, I'd start to get really worried even if there's 15 games left.
Lamont's not a panic button guy. He's not just the guy who's going to flip things when things are going bad. Especially you make the point this week, like you can play well and lose twice this week. That's just the reality of who you're playing against. But if you come out and get flattened in both these games this week, if we're looking up here on Saturday night and it's 3 losses in the conference by a combined 90 to 100 points or whatever after you lost by 35 last week, then I think you kind of have to just to show like a pulse, just to show that you're awake, make some kind of a change. Once you get into some games that might actually be a little more winnable starting next week.
And then in the football transfer portal, some activity going on and still trying to fill out this roster. What do you still think is one of the bigger pressing issues that this team needs to address that you probably don't think has been addressed as much as you expected once the bowl season ended?
Yeah, this is not something I would have said before the bowl game, but I still think you need another running back in that room, to be honest with you. I don't hate Oscar Attaway. I don't think I think he can help you, but I think you kind of saw some of his ceiling in that game. You don't have enough experience between Jordan Howell and Matthew Fuller to just turn over the keys for, 200 carries in a season, 150 carries in a season of those guys, I don't think. So I think you need another back in that room just to create some competition, even though that's maybe not what jumps off the page with what they're losing on defense.
Alan, good stuff as always, buddy. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again here real soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
That's Alan Cole.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Thank you. See, look at that. Look at that. That's good. See. Elijah won't do that.
Well, I mean, I will right now because we're only a weekend.
Right.
I'm cool with that.
Right.
The year is still very much new to me.
Happy New Year, Alan. Alan __. That's two of them. Cole on the Twitters and GamecockScoop.com. Speaking of Scoop, breaking National Football League news on the other side. Thanks again to Alan Cole for joining us. Welcome back in. Jay, Elijah with you. Coming up bottom of the 4 o'clock hour, our good friend, the voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, will join us. We'll talk more Carolina hoops with him. Alabama in town tomorrow night. Breaking news out of the National Football League. Not unexpected news. The Raiders have fired Antonio Pierce after just one season. Vegas going 4-13 this year. He did have a postseason press conference yesterday. Did Coach Pierce said, "Yeah, as far as I know, I'll be back." But I hadn't talked to anybody yet. So today they talked.
That's lame.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. All of a sudden, it's turned into a pretty good division, with 3 teams going to the playoffs out of the AFC West. But I don't know. Yeah, and look, the Raiders for a long time now have just not been very good. There's nothing. I mean, does Tom Brady coming in as a minority owner, and I don't even what's his percentage? Is it like he bought in a pretty good stake, but
10
it's like 10%.
Yeah, I won't say it was in that ballpark.
But is that going to matter? Look, I don't think Mark Davis has surrounded himself with great people. The Raiders are a very storied franchise, national fan base. I think this will be attractive, but to whom? And, what kind of assurances can a head coach get? And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you right now. I don't know what cap space looks like for them. I will say this, Brock Bowers had a hell of a rookie season.
He was awesome.
I think it's going to come down to him. Speaking of that division, him, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels. I guess Daniels is going to be the rookie of the year.
Probably being a starting quarterback on a team that went to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think those 3 are your guys. But I don't know. I mean, help me out if I'm missing somebody else that's going to really be. I think those 3 are the ones that are the leaders in the clubhouse, at least. So you've got a really nice piece to build around. But eventually, especially at that position, if you don't get a tight end some help, that's easy enough, I would think, in a relative sense, for NFL defenses to begin to shut down. A lot of times it'll be that way. Like, all right, Rook, let's see what you can do, and then eventually they go, oh,
he can do a lot.
Okay, well, we better take care of that. But I'm not surprised by this.
I mean, not surprised, because that's something that bad franchises do, is fire coaches after 1 year. Because what were they really expecting from this team in that division this year? What were they honestly expecting Antonio Pierce to do when the 3 quarterbacks who took snaps and threw passes for you were Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, and Desmond Ridder? Yeah, those are 3 quarterbacks that will win you 4 games.
I guess they were hoping to win 6 games.
Right. Like, oh, yeah, you're mad they didn't win 6. Like, now you have a pretty high pick in the NFL draft. Something else to keep building on.
Let's see. They
there was
lost.
No expectation for them to be very good this year.
Well, remember,
I hate this trend of firing someone 1 year after they win 4 games, and previously you didn't win much more than that.
I remember in week 2 when they did go to Baltimore and win, and people were like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. That has, as now that the regular season's over, that's one of the most head scratching results that we got in the NFL
the entire
regular season. Yeah.
They lost by 12, 14, 16. 19, 5, 7, 17, 15, 10, 2, 15, 6, and 14 points. So very rarely were they even in the game. And their single-digit losses were to Atlanta, Kansas City at home, but Kansas City lost or beat everybody by single digits.
Yeah, that was kind of their formula for winning, is pulling it out of their rear.
Let's see, and they lost at the Rams by 5 points. So, they
that
beat
Falcons game was 15-9.
Yeah, I know, gross. They beat.
They're disgusting.
I know, right?
That is disgusting work.
That's terrible. I think both teams were fined by Roger Goodell for that one. They beat Cleveland. They beat Baltimore. They beat Jacksonville.
And New Orleans.
And they went to New Orleans and won. But by then, New Orleans was like, I don't want to play anymore.
Last place team. One of the best teams in the NFL. those their wins.
It's crazy. Yeah. So I don't know. Are you? In my opinion, you need to swing a little bigger this time if you're Mark Davis. Does that mean luring a current head coach or even going and getting a grown-up like Pete Carroll to come in and kind of right the ship for you for a couple of years? I don't know. But
even then, it would take a couple of years.
Yes.
And that's the one thing that people like Mark Davis and these owners who treat these football teams like it's the toy daddy got them for Christmas don't understand.
Yeah.
Dan Campbell and the Lions were atrocious that first year.
Yeah.
They weren't supposed to be good. What happens if they would have fired him?
And sometimes they do. You know, as as Langston has told us, Deuce was on that staff early, but as Langston has told us, the Fords are really kind of like, sure, just whatever. And eventually they got somebody in there that was good at what they did.
Yeah, and it took time.
Yeah.
And that took time.
Yeah. How to fix college football. We got a plan from a national writer. We'll get it to you coming up. 4 o'clock on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Second hour of the Postgame Show coming at you from the Herndon Chevy Studios in downtown Columbia, South Carolina, alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Happy New Year. That's a theme of today. Happy New Year. We had one of our callers a couple days ago.
I love how this is a theme on January 7th.
Happy New Year. I had a caller after the bowl game saying that he didn't like that wedding at the Citrus Bowl. And you and I said, like, we love love. I love love.
You're a huge proponent.
I love happiness. I want people to feel good about what's going on in the world. Scary times for a lot of people. And just Happy New Year, man. That's all. I don't know why you gotta feel like I'm doing it wrong. It's mean.
Well, it's not mean. It's just eventually it'll be inaccurate. And that's really my big beef here.
Eventually it will.
It will eventually be inaccurate.
Eventually it will. Eventually. But not yet.
And I'm here for accuracy. I went to a serious journalism school, Jay Phillips, Middle Tennessee State University, where we were taught these very lessons of accuracy.
Well, sources close to me say I can still say Happy New Year.
I assume that source close to you would be you.
These are anonymous sources. Happy New Year, Elijah.
Happy New Year, Jay Phillips.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're lucky we're still a week into the year.
Literally. Day 7.
And this might be, and after today.
Yeah, for you. That just means you don't want people to be happy anymore. I want people to be happy every day of the year.
I don't want people consuming stale.
All right, how about this then?
Greetings.
If I don't say Happy New Year anymore, I'll just say Happy Year. Happy Year. Just happiness to all.
Love that.
Yes.
I love that.
Thank you. Now we're good. Now we're good.
My greetings will never be stale.
I'll blend two stories into one here because I didn't have time to get to the Steve Spurrier story I was telling you about because we had breaking news after our visit with Alan Cole. And then this is going to take me into, this is a perfect springboard, actually. And here's one reason why, because I know what Coach said here, and I think he's right. I just don't know what he wants. Whereas what we'll talk about next, to blend these stories of fixing college football, the next guy I cite has great detail. But Coach Spurrier was talking about how to better choose the schools that participate in the college football playoff. And, of course, Steve spent many, many years as a player in the NFL. He coached in the NFL. He said, another thing I like about the NFL, I think there were 4 teams that finished 3-14. What are they going to do? Flip a coin? In terms of getting the number 1 pick, he says. No, let's say 4 of them have the worst record. The one that played the easier schedule, they get the first pick. So at least there's a format instead of the committee saying, hey, I've watched all of them. Let's give the first pick to New England. Let's give first pick to this team. They have a format on how to do it. You'd think college football, that committee somehow would put it in simple terms if they can. I don't know if they can or not because so many teams don't play against the other teams. He says simple terms would be no real debate about who gets in. Look, I get what he's trying to say here. And I think there will be tweaks, maybe as soon as this coming season, certainly by 26, right? Because anything that changes for 25, let me remind all of you, has to be done unanimously. Whereas with 26, it's a majority because that 26 is when the new deal in terms of format, structure, et cetera, officially begins. So what you see now, what you see next season, and what you see in 26 could be 3 different things, right? So what are the simple terms? I mean, I think you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, Elijah. There's a lot of people around the National Football League that don't like the fact that division winners, if they have a worse record than wildcard teams, still get a home game. Get them into playoffs? Sure. Let them host? No. That playing a long season, again, the Minnesota Vikings won 14 bleeping games and they're going to have to go on the road. But the Bucs won 9 games, right? And they get to host.
I think they got 10.
10?
They got to 10.
Maybe they had 9 on it. Yeah. Anyway, a worse record.
Still 10-7. They lost 7 games.
Yeah, but it's a worse record than a wild card team. And again, whatever.
By 4 whole games.
But with college football, obviously, it was the 4 highest-ranked conference champions were going to get buys. Notre Dame basically agreed to a system where they would never be able to get one of the top 4 seeds or get a bye. I'm of the opinion, by the way, that you need to go to 16. So to Coach's point, I think what is, quote, simpler is having 16. Let's not have buys, but let's have more home games. Let's earn the right to play at home. Let the conference champions in so that conference titles still mean something. Give them that berth, but don't give them a bye. Don't give them an artificial seed. And I'm not trying to knock Boise or Arizona State the way some have. Well, they don't deserve to be up there ahead of Notre Dame or Penn State or Ohio. System said they did, so they did. That was the system. Don't like the rule, change the rule, right? That's kind of how we operate.
They earned it by winning their conference, and other teams that would have been ahead of them not winning their conference.
So he says one thing there, and then he says the other, which is the more appropriate, and that is, I don't know if they can because you got too many teams. That's paraphrasing, but that's basically what he's saying. Everybody can't play everybody. Again, you want a simple way to do it? Everybody play everybody. Right?
And we can't even do that in our conferences anymore because we bloated them.
So, and let's face it, the SEC never played everybody in conference play. Even going back to when there was just 10, because they played 7 games. And then when then it went to 8 for a minute, you still couldn't do it.
Nope.
And then it's been at 8 ever since the expansion. And that's Carolina-Arkansas expansion. So I get it. There's got to be a simpler way. Again, go to 16, seed them up, 1 through 16. Somebody's still going to be mad, whoever 17 was, because you can't do it NFL style.
Nope. That ship has sailed.
Yeah, you can't do that. Now, if you want to go to some, Super League or whatever, okay.
Even then, you're still
if you're still
too many teams.
Yeah, it's still going to be. I mean, even if you cut FBS in half,
still too many teams.
Yeah, you're not. What are you going to do?
So there's never going to be.
No.
We're going to have to do the invitational format for as long as this thing exists.
If you want to invite 32 to play, okay. I don't. So. And that's going to get unwieldy real quick.
The best advice I can give you is to win the games on your schedule.
Yeah.
And if you didn't do it, then tough sledding. This year wasn't your year. I want to use the Giannis Antetokounmpo quote that he had after they got bounced by 8-seeded Miami in the playoffs. Sometimes you don't win every year.
Right.
And you know what? When you're at work, sometimes you don't get the big promotion that you wanted to at the end of the year, or you didn't get the raise that you wanted, because that's life. And instead of trying to change the entire system because one team got in that people didn't think deserved to get in, or one team got excluded because people thought should have been included, you know what? There was something they could have done about it.
Right.
At the end of the day, there'll always be something that you could have done to get you into the playoff.
So, again, I'm glad Coach weighed in, but there's not a lot of meat on that bone for us to chew upon. So I'll take you to this instead, but it blends us in. Scott Dockerman, who covers college football for The Athletic, has a 10-step proposal. Some of these things we have discussed on this program, and many of you have probably touched on in some form or fashion over the last couple of years. We'll take this in 2 parts, so I'll get into a couple of them. This first one that he has, Elijah and I did discuss a couple of weeks back. I forget exactly when. It was before the holidays when we were talking about the academic calendar. Like, a lot of fans around the country, well, why are we transferring now? We need to, well, because of school. Again, around the country, school is starting back this week or next week, and you can't. Even if you think it's a sham, all right? And for most of these kids, it's not. They really are going to school. School matters. It's college football. Mm-hmm. Again, I get the cynics out there.
The kids who are playing for the schools should probably be attending.
They have to go to school.
Yeah.
So Scott says something that you and I did. Now, he says move spring football to June. You and I just said let's move it till, maybe the last week of May, whatever. But when everybody's done. Yeah, because most schools are done by the second week of May. Right? The vast majority of American schools are done by the second week of May. So just start it
with Maymesters.
Yeah. But he says move it to June. He said a June practice schedule would allow more of those players to return to full team workouts healthy without missing valuable off-season practices. And really, in the case of most injuries, and I'm not trying to sit here and go, hey, whatever, just suck it up here, kid. If somebody gets really hurt in spring ball, ACL, broken something that requires surgery, things like that, Achilles, they're not going to play that coming season anyway. And injuries happen in this sport. That's unfortunate, but they do. It's a violent sport, and even the non-contact stuff happens because of usage of your body, even if you're young and healthy and you got a great training regimen. We see people get hurt. It's part of life in sports. So some coaches would say, yeah, but I need that, I need May for my April injuries to heal up. I get it. But you're not going to get it anymore. If this, and I like this.
Well, this fits.
Yeah. Because then you can have this, and even if you put yourself in the portal in January after the season, and he has a plan in here he says, open the portal in January. And he talks about the fact, he said the portal could be open open the Tuesday following Martin Luther King Day, remain open for 19 days, reopen the second and third weeks of April. He talks about mini camp, where it'd be a lot more non-contact stuff, the way the NFL does it. You kind of have some walkthroughs, you're in shells.
Installs.
Things like that. I like that idea. Turn spring football, he says, into 12 June practices. Right now you get 15. He said outside of a few high school athletes whose spring sports seasons spill into June, football players are on campus throughout June and July anyway. He's right. They are, because they're taking summer classes, because the vast majority of these football players are taking 12 hours per semester, because football's a full-time job and you need the amount of time available. Move up the early signing period is another one. The December signing period moved this year to the Wednesday preceding conference championship games. In this system, he says, the early signing period would open August 1 and last until the second Monday in October. Players could sign financial aid agreements throughout that time, which would allow them to enroll in time for spring. The second signing period would still take place on the first Wednesday in February, the traditional National Signing Day. Keep it open. Got no problem with that. You'd like to lock up as many guys as possible. If they're ready, they're ready. And I think a lot of coaches would like that too. They don't like to say it publicly. But one thing I've learned in the many, 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 many years now that I've been covering this sport is that so many coaches across, and I'm talking really mostly the staff, not the head coach, feel like they're babysitting recruits until we can finally get it done. You're constantly and you're looking over your shoulder. Who's trying to poach? Who's trying to interfere? Just let them go. If your kid's ready to sign, let them sign. So, and I'm not even sure why we have such restrictions, to be perfectly honest with you. If you're ready to go, go. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
So there's that part of it. That's half of them. I kind of blended the first five. The others get into the things that I think are more logistically concerning for fans.
Yes.
And this is where the real meat of what Scott has written about comes into play.
This would be a perfect fix for the postseason.
Yes. And so then we'll get you into that part of it as the postgame show rolls on. For years, I love telling you all about my good friends at Integrated Media. I still do, and I'll talk about them. But, of course, the guys at Integrated now operating both locations of Pro Swing. The Pro Swing, amazing indoor golf simulation that has people just having so much fun playing golf all year long, regardless of the weather in Columbia, South Carolina, because you're doing it indoors on the amazing Golf Zone simulators. We've done many shows from the one in Chapin, the original. Now the brand new Pro Swing about to open on Forest Drive. It's awesome. I've been in there a couple of times now. I got to play Harbortown the other day on the Golf Zone Simulator. It was amazing. We're going to be doing some shows from there very, very soon. If you love golf, you're going to love Pro Swing. If you love your home theater system or you want one, you're going to love Integrated Media. 803-948-8327. Our good friends at Integrated Media and Pro Swing. They're the best. All right, welcome back into the Postgame Show. 19 minutes after 4 o'clock on this Tuesday. We will interrupt our college football discussion to give you disappointing breaking news here locally. Carolina women's basketball has just announced in the last about 15 minutes that Ashlyn Watkins is indeed done for the season. I will read you the release. South Carolina women's basketball junior Ashlyn Watkins suffered a torn ACL during the January 5th game at Mississippi State and will miss the remainder of the 2024-25 season. Her surgery will be scheduled in the coming weeks. Watkins' season closes with her ranked fourth in the SEC with 1.86 blocks per game. She was second on the team in rebounding at 6.4 per game and averaged 7.2 points through 14 games. So we were just talking with Alan Cole, and that maybe there was some gray area, some hope that it wasn't too bad. You imagine further medical evaluation now. A lot of times in injuries like that, too, to make everything, and I've just talked to guys before that have had this happen, swelling has to come down a little bit and they can really get in there and take a much better look. A lot of times they know right away. A lot of times they don't. And this happened, 2 days ago. So get her back home and then get in there. I would imagine they probably, I don't know when they found out, but this is time stamped at, so they sent this out right after 4 o'clock. So, 15, 20 minutes ago this came out. That's a bummer, man. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, that one hurts, especially considering one of maybe the weaker spots on this team. If you have them, I mean, you're number 2 in the country. You've lost one game. The one game you lost was because you just didn't have enough size and competitiveness down low to beat UCLA. And you're going to need all your forwards to all work in tandem to be able to pick up the slack from losing Camilla from last year, because she was one of your leading scorers, your best rebounder. Whenever the offense would stall out, that was your easy button on offense, was dump the ball down to Camilla, let her score. You needed that on offense, and defensively what Ashland provides you was way more significant, because she's arguably the best rim protector in the SEC, maybe even the country, right? Like in terms of blocking shots, teams don't shoot very well from 2 against South Carolina when Ashland Watkins is on the floor. This is a massive loss from that basketball standpoint, from what you do defensively and how dominant you are defensively. That's tough. It hurts your depth. It hurts the ceiling of your defense, just because she was so good at erasing some of the mistakes that you might make on the perimeter when teams drive to the basket.
You still got some size, but it's not necessarily experienced or just what Dawn was looking for as part of the rotation. Carolina back at it against A&M, a good team, on Thursday night here at home. Dawn will be on Carolina calls tonight at 6. So right after we're done, Dawn and Brad will be on, and certainly this news, I don't want to say will dominate their 1-hour program, but we'll certainly lead it off.
Definitely.
And you can immediately begin to get some insight from Coach on exactly what they'll be looking to do. Look, I mean, again, injuries happen. I'm not sitting here saying, no, it's no big deal, because I think it is a big deal. To what degree, to your point just now, I don't know yet. This is still, arguably the best roster in the country, right? I mean, it's loaded. Still. Yeah, it is loaded with talent. And you'll have to pick up slack here and there as best you possibly can. I don't want to say there's a silver lining that it happens this early in conference play, but let's face it, by this time next month, you will be fully into whatever your new rotation is, as long as everything else remains the way you need it to from a health perspective. And it's not to say, and you won't even remember Ashland. No. That's not what I'm going for. But you'll have learned to play without her. And you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice.
No.
They didn't and Dawn, Dawn and the staff will not let these ladies hold their heads down and feel sorry for themselves. And you might, let's face it too, Elijah, even if this were better news, and obviously this is basically the worst possible outcome, this team knew, flying home from Starkville the other day, well, listen, we're not going to have Ashland this week, I wouldn't think. So already you're beginning to prepare short term. Now you just prepare full term.
Yeah, and this is one of those things too that, you're going to need somebody to step up. Somebody needs to step up and take those minutes, and I think Sanaya Fagan just became one of the most important players on this basketball team right now. She was going to be important all season long. She was going to play a very large role and have a major impact on the success of this team, but now it's just gotten bigger. I think those 4.7 two-point attempts she takes per game will be upped, right? Because Ashland was taking about 6 per game. Yeah. You're going to have to take more of those shots. She was doing really well defensively. And, she's really, if you look at the blocks per game numbers, only 2 players on this team were averaging at least a block per game, and that's Ashland and Sanaya Fagan. Right. Sanaya is going to have to take more of an onus on that rim protection. Someone's going to have to be able to next man up this. And when you look at the roster right now, you're looking really at Chloe Kitts and Sanaya Fagan, and you're probably going to need Sanaya to do a little more scoring than she has this year to kind of help Chloe. I know Chloe's had some games where she's had to take over late with scoring, whether it be Michigan, Duke here at home, and even the Mississippi State game where she had to get some buckets late and corral a double-double to be able to get you out of Starkville cruising with a victory. But this immediately makes Sanaya Fagan arguably the most important player on the basketball team right now.
And what's interesting is some of the other players on this team with real size are the ones that have played the least amount of minutes. Dada, Tack, Walker not averaging as much. Interestingly enough, the third leading blocker on this team, you just mentioned Fagan at 2, is Malaysia Fulwiley, but her blocks are those hustle blocks, where she's coming in off the backside and swatting it away.
Not giving up on the play.
Yeah, as opposed to the rim protection that you were talking about. I think this immediately, I'm trying to look here to see how many starts Fagan has she started. She has started 15, so she started all 15 games this year. But she's averaging, let's see, because this bench is so deep, she averages 16 minutes a game. I think she's going to be getting up over 20 real quick.
And probably going to have to.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, this is what you come to South Carolina for, is to be part of a winning team. And whenever something happens, you can be the next player up. And you are a player who, is incredibly gifted at what you do. And that's why you're here. So I think this is, I'm not, I would say I'm pretty confident in Sanaya's ability to be able to step up. And I'm, in her case, I feel almost excited for her opportunity to be able to showcase what she can do. Because now, those 16 minutes a game, like you said, it's going to be north of 20. I would even say north of maybe 22.
I was going to say it might push up to 25 depending on and then she'll have to, and listen, other teams now, you go after her, you try to get her in foul trouble, knowing that her job as a stopper, as a protector down low also means a lot of physical contact. So this works both ways in terms of how opponents begin to play against her. There's a lot of things, and these are things obviously that this coaching staff will know, and it may mean increased minutes again for some of these other ladies with size that have to come in and begin to play a little bit more meaningful minutes for this ball club. But again, Dawn will be talking more about that tonight, 6 o'clock here in Columbia on 107.5 The Game. All right, so once again, sad news. If you're just tuning in and during the middle of the conversation, Ashlyn Watkins is done for the season with a torn ACL. The basketball team sending out an official release here in the last half hour. And we'll keep you updated on anything further that we get. But like I say, most of that info will be when Dawn and Brad are speaking to you coming up at about an hour and a half. On the other side of the break, our good friend Derek Scott, the voice of the Gamecocks. Carolina with 2 big opportunities, but they're quite daunting this week at CLA. The voice of the Gamecocks joins us when the postgame show returns. Homeowners, been there a while, love your neighborhood, close to school, close to work, close to church, close to your favorite grocery store or anything else, but you're also not real thrilled with the kitchen, the bathrooms, maybe especially after the holidays, you realize time to change some things up. Well, Palmetto Citizens is ready to help you out with their fantastic home equity line of credit. They're local. They're not-for-profit. They've been in business since the 1930s. They know the Midlands. They know the trends all around here, and they're ready to help you out. Unlock your home's equity. Access your line of credit over a 10-year draw period. So you can get that bathroom fixed up now and pay for that along, and then maybe the kitchen comes next. Kids are getting older. They need a little more space, whatever it might be. Palmetto Citizens ready to help you out. Learn more. Apply online even, palmettocitizens.org, or stop into any of their 14 convenient Midlands locations and work with the great staff at Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on Highway 6 near US 1 and East Main Street. Got one on Highway 60 near Trojan Road. Another one on 77 northbound over at Fort Jackson Boulevard near Exit 10. One on Kelly Mill Road near Stallion Drive. One on Coon Store Road at US 321. Sparkleberry Lane at Two Notch Road. And lastly, one on Trenham Road at Highway 16 and North Beltline Boulevard.
Talking some Carolina hoops ahead of two big matchups this week at Colonial Life Arena. Welcome back in alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Gamecocks host Alabama tomorrow night, and Auburn, the number one team in the country in terms of the net ranking, coming to town on Saturday. Alabama's in the top 10 of the same ranking. To join us, or here to talk about it, Derek Scott joins us, the voice of the Gamecocks, fresh back off his trip to Starkville. That game was about as rough as we've seen this season. And, I know there was the North Florida loss. Beyond that, I'd say Carolina doesn't have any bad losses. Mississippi State's a very good team, Mr. Scott, but that performance leaves a lot of people scratching their head and wondering what comes next.
Yeah, you knew the schedule did not do the Gamecocks any favors in the manner in which they would be starting SEC play when you looked at those first three games. And really, the reality of it is the entirety of the conference schedule based on the elite level that the SEC has played at so far this year, it just means across the board, you don't have any breaks. But even saying that, to start on the road in a place that historically you've not had much success, and then get two top five teams right behind it at home before your students can really get back to campus and really get things, to the level of home court advantage you'd like it to be for those sorts of matchups. You knew it would be a really challenging start, but certainly no one would have foreseen the kind of start it was, not only to the conference schedule, but to the game itself. Carolina was so slow coming out of the gate, and, we're in single digits well into the first half and only managed 18 points in the entirety of the first half. You lose by 35. There's nothing you could come away with from that performance that you could feel good about.
How surprised were you at just the – I'm not even sure how to describe – I don't want to say apathy. I think Carolina cared, but State just punched them in the gut, in the mouth, in the throat, wherever, and the Gamecocks just had nothing coming out. What didn't you see, Derek, might be as good a question as anything else in that first 10, 12, 15 minutes?
Well, State's defensive habits are such that if you don't, if you're not ready to go on that kind of level, it can be really hard to adapt, especially in their building. And I felt like that was the biggest thing, was the caliber of defensive opponent you were playing, the fact that you had not seen anything like that. Because, hey, let's be honest, as good as, Clemson, Indiana, and Xavier are, they're not Mississippi State. And certainly not in the level of athleticism and physicality. They're not Mississippi State. So you hadn't measured up against anything that resembled this to this point. And I go back to the first game of the season. You mentioned that loss to North Florida. Lamont Paris afterwards, before we went on the air for the post-game interview, was basically kicking himself and his staff for scheduling that game first, because it was not the kind of opponent you wanted to match up with in your very first game because of the uniqueness of their style of play. And this kind of felt the same way. You didn't have a choice in this one, but you would not have wanted to start conference play on the road at Mississippi State if you had your druthers. Their defensive abilities and style. Chris Jans, they really make it a point in their game notes of highlighting something that a CBS Sports National pundit mentioned a couple of years ago. He said, it's like getting a root canal without Novocaine. That's what it's like to play the Mississippi State defense. So they really build that up. Who wouldn't? But it does. You see things going on when you match up with them, and you're like, yep, that's a pretty apt description. And so the Gamecocks, they were not ready for that, I don't think. I'm not sure they realized that's what they were getting until they were in it, and then they didn't respond terribly well to it. And for that reason, it ends up being as ugly as it was. But the other side of that is it's one game. You flush it, you move on. You've got 2 opportunities this week where you can absolutely get people excited again if you can find a way to pull one of these out, because these are 2 of the top 5 teams in the country coming in.
Yeah, and Mississippi State defensively does a really good job of really making you play in like the space of a phone booth, right? They cut off a lot of the floor, and I thought watching the game, I was really wanting to see more from South Carolina's guards, maybe kind of help Colin out a little bit. I mean, he had 0 assists, 6 turnovers, and a lot of that is just what Mississippi State does when they get you in that short corner on that one side of the floor. But what are maybe some things that you need to start seeing out of South Carolina's guards that's going to be able to help them when they do continue to run into defenses like Mississippi State's? We're going to see that in Alabama and Auburn, where they're tall, they're long, they're athletic, and they have no qualms with trapping you at certain parts of the floor.
Yeah, well, you've got to be stronger with the basketball. It all begins and possibly ends right there. You've got to be prepared for that level of physicality. And then, the quickness that comes with it can certainly be a challenge. The athleticism that you're going to see night in and night out in this league. But, with the Mississippi State style, it starts with that physicality. They're coming to take the ball away from you. They're going to, reach for the ball, slap at the ball. If they catch your arm, they don't care. They're going to do it enough. They don't think the officials will call all of it. So it's going to be really a matter of how do you respond to it. And you may or may not remember, but last year in the SEC opener at home against Mississippi State, first 5 to 8 minutes were the same sort of, oh gosh, our guys look like they're over their skis. But then the veterans settled in, and it didn't stay that way. These other guys here now that are in those shoes, that are in the shoes that were filled last year by Talon Cooper and Meechie Johnson specifically, they've got to do the same thing. They've got to be tougher with the basketball, and they got to be ready for that level of physicality, because it's not just a one-game issue. If you look at where this team has struggled, if you want to dig into some analytics, the steal percentage defensively is not good. It's 334th in the country now after Mississippi State basically took their lunch money. That's not just bad in conference play. That's been bad all season. They don't turn it over much in the non-steal capacity, but as far as the percentage of possessions that end with steals by the opposition, it's bad, and that's got to get fixed.
Voice of the Gamecocks, Derek Scott, with us here. Carolina, Alabama tomorrow night at CLA. Auburn in town on Saturday. You mentioned the backcourt from last year, and one of the things that Elijah and I have discussed, and I know you know these guys well, and you're around them a lot, and so I'm asking you this, like, avoiding leadership as well. I don't mean to say there aren't leaders on this team, and there aren't guys that can help steer the ship from an intangible perspective, but you do miss that from Talon and Meechie as well. Where might that come from? Are you seeing players defer to one over another right now? Is there a search for who that person can be? How big a deal is that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit there and act like I'm, able to stare in there and tell you the answers to all of that. I'm not. I'm the play-by-play guy. I'm not in the locker room, and you don't get that on the bus or on the plane to really learn that much about it. But no, I think that is a big question: is who's going to be that leader? Some of the guys who you would think are potential leaders in that regard, they might not be cut out for it in terms of their vocal style. Meechie loved to talk. He wanted to be the guy that people look to for leadership. Talon, although he was pretty quiet outwardly, you hear stories about, things didn't go well. The locker room, the first guy to speak up at halftime in the locker room and say, what the blank was that, was Talon Cooper. So you've got to figure out who that's going to be. And, Colin is still, in spite of being by far the best player on this basketball team and one of the best in the country, he's still just a sophomore. He's young. I'll see him at times on the court, and I'm sure you guys see it too, where he'll one-on-one be trying to help someone with a correction. But that's different than being the vocal guy. And the one thing I notice is when you talk about the huddle that they use to wrap up every practice, Michi led that last year, and that was his thing. And Jacoby is doing it now, and Jacoby Wright's been around the longest in this program. But Jacoby's a quiet guy. He's a great guy. He doesn't have Michi's personality at all. So, yeah, that's the thing. It's still got to be figured out who's going to be that leader. And then on top of that, leaders can't fix things for individuals. The guys have all got to step up and start being better at the roles, and that starts with the veterans like Jacoby, like Miles Studi, and then it goes down to your young guys too. Coach Ferris mentioned it post game, and he wasn't calling anybody out as far as Colin is concerned. But if Colin doesn't play well, then we're not going to have great opportunity to win against the best teams in the country, i.e. the SEC. So whether it's fair or not, he's got to be great for you to beat the great teams. And you think back to how good he was against State last year when we were in Starkville at the end of the year. He looked like Superman against him. He did everything. And then obviously his performance this year in Starkville was probably the most disappointing performance we've seen from him as a Gamecock.
And then looking ahead to tomorrow, Alabama's different this year in terms of they don't make as many of the threes they take. They still take a ton, and they're the most effective two-point shooting team in college basketball. How do you think they match up there defensively?
Yeah, it still, I think, begins and ends with Mark Sears. They've got other pieces, of course, but Sears is the guy who was in the conversation last year for National Player of the Year and is right there again this year. And so, you've got to find a way to manage him better than you did in terms of, that same responsibility against Josh Hubbard. And I'm not saying that's one particular person. There will have to be a lot of guys who are involved in that. But Sears is, he's on the verge or just became the fifth player in Bama history with 1,500 points and 200 three-pointers. And, of course, he played his first 2 years somewhere else. He's been amazing since he got there. And, nobody else in the SEC is in the top four in scoring and assists. That's significant. That's what I say. It's got to be about containing Sears. Every single possession is going through that guy. And it's not an easy thing to solve, or his numbers wouldn't be as great as they are. And when you look at, what they did against Oklahoma, he got to the line 13 times and made 11 of them. So he has a double-double with 22 points and 10 assists, even though he only made 1 3. And in most games, if you go in and say, hey, Sears is going 1 for 6 from 3, you'd think you got you're set up. But it's not that simple. He's not one-dimensional in any capacity. He's a really great player, and that'll be really the task of the guards to try and manage him better than they did, his counterpart in Starkville.
Have a good call tomorrow, sir. We appreciate you. We'll do it again soon.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
That's Derek Scott. D. Scott Gamecocks, Carolina tomorrow, 6:30 airtime, 7 o'clock tip. The Crimson Tide coming to town. This is the Postgame Show. 10 minutes in front of 5 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. Postgame show rolling on. Top of the hour. Headlines of the day. Drive around the SEC next hour as well. We will. I guess we have a little bit of time here. For those who were with us for the whole hour, you heard us talking about Scott Dockerman's piece in The Athletic on ways to fix college football. Quite honestly, I don't really have the time to wrap that one up. That conversation was put on hold while we discussed the Ashlyn Watkins breaking news. And if you haven't heard that, we'll give it to you again. The South Carolina forward has torn an ACL, is done for the season, surgery scheduled in the coming days. So that's a big blow to the South Carolina women's basketball team. But we'll get back in when we can on some, because I love this idea of what Scott has to fix football, and I do want to continue to make that a part of the program. We just don't have a whole lot of time to get it done right now. As for Carolina men's basketball tomorrow night, look, I think Derek called it pretty well there. You didn't see a lot of energy in the game on Saturday at the Hump. It is a tough place for anybody to go. And one thing he didn't say that I'll say, I don't want to say for him, but I think it's pretty obvious, Elijah, when he talked about maybe the three best teams that South Carolina saw in the non-con, none of them are, and that, by the way, he said were Clemson, Indiana, and Xavier in no particular order. He said none of them are as good, and he's seen them all, as Mississippi State. Well, I would also tell you I don't think that Mississippi State is as good as Alabama or Auburn.
No. Mississippi State's good this year. And that, in terms of improvement, they probably have one of the most improved offensive units, because last year their whole issue was they could guard everybody in the conference. They just couldn't score buckets, right? This year they're a top 15 offensive team in college basketball right now. And that makes them dangerous because they're still a top 40 defensive unit. But Alabama too, they provide so much that you have to worry about on offense. Yes, they don't shoot the ball as well from three like they have in the past. They're only making about 31.5% of the three-pointers, which is well below the average of a college basketball team. But they're the number one two-point shooting team in college basketball. Even though they only shoot those half the time, they space the floor so well. And they're so athletic, and they still make you worry about the threat of them shooting threes, that they open up so many driving lanes and so many lanes to cut, and that's where they kill you. They're really good at putting the ball on the floor, driving to the lane, and finding those options and hitting enough threes to make you worry about having to make them. So, that's offensively, that's still where they're at their best, and they just get into transition so fast. Their average possession, Jay, lasts 14.8 seconds. They don't use half the shot clock. They get into those actions fast, and you have to be able to be prepared to play about 75 possessions in a game when you're normally playing 63.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people in the SEC want to see Nate Oates go to the NBA.
to get him out to,
because that's what he does,
have to
right?
do that. Yeah,
we'll talk more about it tomorrow, obviously. And we have a lot of fun when we talk about the EBPI. I'll try to be more serious about it. I'm trying to look for somewhere where South Carolina can still be relatively close with, say, at the under 8 of the second half.
Yeah.
And I don't know right now. I don't mean to be Debbie Downer. I just don't know what that looks like based on what I've seen.
Because you just need better guard play, and you need it from somebody. Whether it's Jacoby, that's fine. Whether it's from Jamari, that's fine. Whether it's from Morris, maybe you start seeing Morris in the starting lineup, because offensively, it seems as if that's one of your most reliable players. If you look at KenPom right now and you look at the offensive rating metric, which is how many points your team scores per 100 possessions that you're on the floor, out of all the guards, Morris has the best offensive rating by a mile. So Zachary Davis, but who's more of a tweener forward. That is one of your best options.
I just
probably moving the line.
I've been a fan of that kid's for a while, and I'm not here to tell anybody how to do their job or anything like that. But I think you at least got to give it a look with more minutes. He's averaging 20 a game. Can you get him out there for a half hour? See what happens. I don't know. Hour 3 coming up. A little cold in the mornings. You're a little stiffer. Been waking up lately with a little back pain, neck pain, any kind of joint pain. Start to feel better with our friends at the Joint Chiropractic Centers. Listen, now that the holidays are done, those stresses are away, but you're still feeling All right. Well, listen, all they want to do at the Joint is help you feel better. They want to improve your overall health. Affordable, convenient chiropractic care is how they do it. They also can help you maintain and prevent the reoccurring problems that may have you feeling a little bit down. They're FSA and HSA approved. Local owners Janet and Bob Keene been here a long time. And like I say, they just want to help you feel better. That's it. It's really that simple. Plus, once you become a client of the Joint and you're maybe traveling for work, for vacation, anything else, there are Joint Chiropractic Centers all across the country. You're in the system, so you need a little something when you're out of town, they can get it done for you all across the country. Here in Columbia, Harbison, Forest Drive, Roberts Branch, and Sunset Boulevard. Again, convenient and affordable, no appointment necessary, no insurance. You don't have to feel bad to feel better at the Joint.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, but we'll start off with some good news. And that's that the accident that was on Highway 6 near US 1 and East Main Street has been cleared, so traffic moving much more smoothly through that area. We still have some other accidents, though, two in Lexington County, one on Highway 1 at Augusta Road at I-26, the other being at Highway 60 near Trojan Road. In Richland County, we still have two accidents that are causing active traffic backups, including one on I-77 northbound at Fort Jackson Boulevard near Exit 10, and the other at Sparkleberry Lane at Viking Drive.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. It's also the final hour of the Postgame Show. Along with Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. We start once again with the disappointing news that came out about 1 hour ago, give or take. South Carolina women's basketball announcing that junior forward Ashlyn Watkins has indeed torn her ACL. This happened on the Sunday game at Mississippi State. She will miss the remainder of the 24-25 season. Her surgery is scheduled for the coming weeks, according to the release from the basketball team. She was fourth in the conference with about 1.9 blocks per game, second on the team in rebounding at 6.4, and she was averaging 7.2 points through 14 games. Carolina is back home this week with a Thursday game against Texas A&M. That's, again, a late afternoon affair, a 5 o'clock tip at CLA on Thursday. And as we talked about earlier, Elijah, but bears repeating, this will put a lot on Sanaya Fagan, who is a starter for South Carolina. She started all 15 games so far this season, but only playing, because the bench is so deep, about 16 minutes per game. So you would expect to see those numbers increase from a minutes perspective and obviously from a production perspective very, very quickly. There is some size and height on this team, but interestingly enough, maybe some of the taller players on this team are the ones that just aren't playing as much for a variety of reasons right now. Coach Staley will be on with Brad in about an hour for a special edition of Carolina Calls, and she'll have more. A tough blow, a great player, a local product, and yet it comes at, as we talked about too, at a point, there's never a good time for this, but it comes at a point where absorbing this roster loss gives you plenty of time to acclimate because you don't have any other choice.
Right. I mean, Texas A&M comes to town on Thursday, and then Sunday, Texas. That's one of the best teams in the country with one of the best players in the country in Madison Booker, which is going to take a lot of your focus on defense. And you're not going to have your best rim protector and stopper on defense anymore this year. And that's going to be an adjustment you're going to have to make on the fly and make pretty quickly. And I definitely feel like the most important player now in that forward room and who's going to have to step up the most is going to be Sanaya. Right. She's going to have to be available too. I mean, that's maybe one of the reasons why she hasn't played as many minutes is because she, on a per 40-minute basis, fouls the most. I mean, she can get in some foul trouble. I mean, per 40 minutes, she fouls out.
Yep.
Right at 5.1 fouls per 40 minutes. She's
and that's what I was saying to you earlier.
A lot more available in these games.
Looking at those numbers, that's here's Jay and Elijah talking about it at 5:03 on a Tuesday. I can assure you that opposing coaches know these things too, and you plan accordingly, and you get her in foul trouble. So it'll mean Chloe Kitts, and again, it could mean some others that haven't seen as much time. We'll have to find ways to make a difference, as we talked about too. Interestingly, the third leading blocker on this team is Mylasia Fulwiley, who does not block her shots the way that Ashlyn and Sanaya did in terms of, again, rim protector. She comes flying in LeBron style off the backside and
the
just
chase down block.
Swats those things away, man. And she's good at it, and she gets a lot of them. But you'll want her to do more of that, but you don't ask her to change her game, but you will have others need to step up. But again, in about an hour, Brad and Dawn will be on Carolina Calls here on the Gamecock Radio Network, and Coach Dawn will have a lot more on exactly. I imagine in some ways you and I had already discussed too. You knew on Sunday that was not a good-looking injury, if you will. We didn't know until, again, about an hour ago that it was definitely season-ending. But I feel certain that it was one that the team was at least preparing for in the short to mid-term in terms of an absence. So mentally they were already getting there. Now there is just some finality to what Ashlyn will go through this year.
Yeah, that's it's unfortunate. Been a tough year. For her as well, not getting to play the entirety of the season. I think she ended up with 14 games. I don't remember exactly what the cutoff for redshirting is, but don't think that's an option at this point in time.
I wouldn't think so. Not now.
Not 14 games.
I want to say it's like, is it maybe 25% of your team's games, and then they'd be past that?
They would, be well past that at this point.
Yeah, so. I think it's something like that, but 14 is not. Yeah. So. Yeah. Again, tune in as soon as we're done. More from Dawn on how the team has absorbed this news, and at least how they begin to prepare for life the rest of the season without Ashlyn Watkins. Staying with some Gamecock news in our integrated media headlines of the day, Ethan Petrie has been named a perfect game preseason All-American. This is the second time that he has gotten one of these preseason honors. He earned second-team honors by the perfect game staff and is now going into his third year at South Carolina. Sorry, I was trying to read two things at once.
Hard to do.
A 341 career average, 18 doubles, 1 triple, 44 home runs, 128 driven in. And again, that's in 2 seasons of college baseball. That's actually quite remarkable.
It's pretty damn good.
Those home run numbers, by the way, 5th all-time at the University of South Carolina. Last year, 61 games, 8 doubles, the triple that he has. So let's get those triple numbers up there, Ethan. Come on, man.
We have to even some of this out.
21 homers, 53 runs batted in. Carolina opens up on Valentine's Day. Oh. And guess what? Can't make this stuff up. I've looked at the schedule, but I had forgotten. They open with Sacred Heart.
Can't make it up. This is poetic. I would say this is very poetic.
You think Coach Maneri did that on purpose?
I would like to think so.
I do too. Because I bet he loves love. The way we were talking about last week. We love love.
This show loves love.
Yeah.
Whether you're getting, married at the Citrus Bowl with it being officiated by a man in a large Cheez-It costume, or just taking a date out to the ballpark on Valentine's Day against a team called Sacred Heart.
Listen. Right now, I don't know how many of you have ever wanted to get married at a Carolina sporting event.
This would be the one to do it.
But you know what?
If there was ever one to do it for,
I
found your game.
Yeah. So, Kent Reichert, I'm not trying to give you more work, but I think you need to put out some kind of release. We need to get this thing rolling.
A contest like Cheez-It did.
Let's not even have a contest. Just sign them up. We'll have one of those.
That's true.
We'll have one of those big mass weddings out in the outfield. Come on, Valentine's Day, Sacred Heart.
This is perfect.
You can't.
Or if there's ever a game that you're going to pop the question to.
There you go. We can do that.
This is.
We're solving the world's problems.
I mean, this will be a fun event.
I mean, seriously, you can't make that up. Valentine's Day, Sacred Heart.
Love it. What a combo.
What's the next best school to play? Chew on that. I don't want you to have to answer it right now. So chew on it. What's the closest we could get to Sacred Heart?
To play for
on Valentine's Day.
On
Valentine's Day. Just be thinking about that.
Okay, I'm gonna go through some names here.
All right. Because I'm having trouble, flexing my brain right now on that one. But there's got to be another one.
That's going to be.
There might not be, man.
Impossible to.
There might not be. There might not be. All right, there you go. Speaking of love, we go in the opposite direction. The Raiders today fired Antonio Pierce after just one season as their head coach. The Raiders 4-13. Again, had one of the more, at the time, it was a cool win, but then it became one of the more inexplicable wins in the NFL season. They went to Baltimore in week 2 and beat the Ravens, but they only won twice more beyond that. Mark Davis, through with the team, says we appreciate Antonio's, that's the owner, we appreciate Antonio's leadership first as an interim head coach and this past season as the head coach. Antonio grew up a Raiders fan, and his silver and black roots run deep. We are grateful for his ability to reignite what it means to be a Raider throughout the entire organization. We wish nothing but the best for Antonio and his family in the future. Aren't you ready for an owner to go, you know what, I hope he slips and falls on a banana peel and hurts himself?
I just want a press release to say this guy sucked.
Good
riddance.
Of course, Tom Brady now a minority owner of the Raiders. How much of a say will he have with Mark Davis? You would think some. Does Tom Brady make this job more attractive, less attractive, same when it comes to trying to lure a head coach?
I think this makes it less. Because there's not going to be much patience. I think the lack of patience is really a big thing. It clearly hasn't changed how much patience they have.
No.
Tom Brady joining the ownership group and the amount of patience that Mark Davis has displayed in terms of canning coaches since 2020. They've had a lot of different ones.
I don't know what they're going to. I'm kind of with you. I think that a lot of people will go like, well, what's it going to be? Well, like, I don't know. It's a good job, and they've got a great ballpark. They're in Vegas now. There's obviously stability in terms of ownership. I mean, Mark Davis isn't going to sell this team. I don't know. He's not a very good owner, in my opinion. But it is a good gig. I mean, there's a lot of people throughout the NFL. You got to be a certain type. I think the Raiders are that. You know what I mean? They really are.
Yeah.
But maybe now in Vegas, it's a little more corporate and a little less, fierce than it once was. I don't know.
Say Mark is less fierce than his father was.
He is, absolutely.
Yeah.
With his little Lord Fauntleroy haircut.
It's not great looking.
It's not a good haircut.
It's not the best money could buy.
Well, I think he goes to, there's like, I'm not going to say names, but, there's like the discount haircutteries in the mall and stuff. And I feel like whatever the discount haircuttery is where Mark goes to. He might even cut his own hair.
I was going to say he cuts his own or he just goes to his neighbors.
Floby. The little vacuum thing.
That's what he does. Still hard to believe the last time they went to the Super Bowl, Brian Callahan was coaching.
Yeah, I think they backed.
Or Bill. No,
Bill Callahan.
Yeah, Bill. Brian's his son.
Yeah, Bill Callahan.
Who was not doing a good job on his own.
No.
In Tennessee.
No. But he didn't get fired.
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's coming, though.
Yeah.
That one's coming.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. Raiders are looking for a head coach. And finally, in our integrated media headlines of the day, some college football news. Northern Illinois, who pulled off one of the great upsets of the season, will join the Mountain West Conference beginning in 2026, but as a football-only member. That vote was taken today by the leadership of the Mountain West schools. Says NIU AD Sean Frazier, quote, "What a great opportunity for NIU athletics as we expand our horizons, adapt to this new national model of athletics, and prepare to start a new chapter in the history of NIU football." In addition to Northern Illinois, the Mountain West will include Air Force, Hawaii, UNLV, Nevada, New Mexico, San Jose State, and Wyoming in 2026. So there you go. NIU going in. It's a great win against Notre Dame, man.
Traditional Western, Mountain West type school.
Sure.
Very mountainous Illinois. Very Western.
Well, hey. I mean, again, California and Stanford are in the ACC.
Traditional.
And apparently we're getting
Atlantic
ready to
Coast
start
power.
renaming bodies of water, so who cares?
Yeah. Apparently that's a thing now.
At this point, just label it whatever the hell you want, man.
Words mean nothing.
That's right. Who cares? Congratulations to NIU. That's our integrated media headline of the day. 803-948-8327 for all your home theater needs and so much more. Work with our great friends at Integrated Media. All right, we're going to come back around. We'll recap a quick hit for you. And we were discussing earlier in the day, before a lot of breaking news came down, about a great plan that we like to, air quote, fix a lot of the problems of college football. We'll do it when the postgame show returns. Welcome back in. Postgame Show rolling on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Again, as soon as we're done tonight, a special edition of Carolina Calls with Dawn Staley and our good friend Brad Muller right here in Columbia on 107.5 The Game. I was just laughing. I was going back to my Twitter feed, and I honestly, we've done so much, I totally forgot about what we did earlier in the show. So now I get to laugh about it again. There was many of you have heard of the website and Twitter feed message board geniuses,
Appropriately named.
and they take submissions, but they also scour the message boards and find the best of the best. And there was a Clemson fan who I guess yesterday put forth the proposition that Nick Saban would be the most ideal candidate to become Clemson's defensive coordinator. And I was just looking. Many of you who listen to our morning show as well know that that Bill has what is he? He doesn't call it. What does he call it? The wheel of some. It's not the wheel of punishment. That's a Dan Patrick thing. But anyway,
Wheel of misfortune.
something like that. Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you. And I said, if Nick Saban becomes the defensive coordinator of Clemson, that I will not just spin that wheel. There won't even be a need to spin the wheel. I'll do every one of these things.
Like to see it.
Yeah. Oh, I know you're pulling for it now.
But it ain't happening, so I can't really get my
No, it's
hopes
not.
up
It's not going to happen.
in any way, shape, or
It's
form.
not. What did you say? There's probably a better chance of someone in Columbia being attacked by both a grizzly and polar bear at the same time.
Yeah, same day. I'll even give you the same day.
Sure.
You can get mauled by a polar bear at 8 a.m. and then catch these hands from a grizzly at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
But that's still not.
You come out like, you know what happens? You get hit by the grizzly at like 8, right? You get a little torn up. You go to doctor's care, and as you're walking out of doctor's care, here comes the polar bear to get you.
Standing here looking at you, giving you the bring it on, buddy. Bring it on, buddy. You think this is over?
You know, you got your ointment and you got a little bandage, a little sling
You got
perhaps with a shoulder.
crutches.
Yeah.
Walking out. And here comes a polar bear crushing a Coca-Cola glass bottle, of course,
That's right.
spiking it on the ground, burping, looking at you, telling you to bring it on. It's over at that point, buddy.
So
You see that, it is over.
I had totally forgotten that we'd put that up there. So
Over.
good stuff. Again, I get it. Nick Saban's really good at what he does.
Yeah.
And
But he's not doing it
the
for
guy's reasoning more than as much of the defensive prowess of Nick's career was that Nick can't be having fun at his current gig at game day.
Where he gets to travel all around the continental United States, be on TV, make a lot of money,
And
just talk about football.
he's making nearly the same amount of money. That's just it.
And he owns so many car dealerships across the U.S. too that he is pulling in a ton of money.
I think he and Miss Terry are enjoying life.
Yes,
He's good. He's good. But
I
anyway,
think Miss Terry enjoys having him around a little more.
yeah, or his money.
Yes.
One of the two. Anyway, all right. So earlier today, we were talking about this. Scott Dockerman, a college football writer for The Athletic, has a 10-step proposal, although many of them kind of blend together to, not to fix. He says basically to fix the college football calendar. And this is a 12-month fix, not just, about the season or how to seed the playoffs or anything like that. And a lot of it we talked about before, moving spring football to the end of the spring semester. He says to June and having like a mini camp somewhere in March, but it's not a full contact mini camp, more of a run through kind of a thing. Move up the early signing period from like August to October, then still have a traditional signing period in February. And that's kind of where we left things off. And I like all of those things. Basically, if you're ready to sign in August of your senior year of high school, have at it, man. And let's just get it done. And that'll help coaches, with their calendar. And, again, not having to babysit recruits and commits all the way through the season. That's my word, not his. But I've talked to enough coaches that I mentioned earlier through the years to say that they do have to do that. And all of you that follow it, and I promise you, there's a lot of you listening right now that pay a lot more attention on a daily or weekly basis to recruiting than I do. I don't have any problem. I've admitted that my whole career. That's why I am huge fans of guys like Chris and Wes and Hale and those guys that do it every day. Because I don't.
It's hard.
Yeah, I don't. So here's where we get into the heavier lifting, if you will, of how to really change some things around. Move the regular season schedule up 1 week. Now, I hate the term week 0. Made no secret of that either. Just turn that into week 1, if you will, but everybody plays. Everybody plays. I'm all for that. I've been for this for years, before we had some of these other logistical issues. He says the regular season would conclude the Saturday before Thanksgiving, which would allow conference championship games to take place over the holiday weekend. Listen, I will blend a couple of things here. I've made no secret of the fact that I don't like rivalry weekend in college football being Thanksgiving Saturday, right? I think it takes away from a lot of family time. It forces a lot of kids that, want to go to their game, and I don't care where you go to school, to either, man, do I go home and see the folks? Do I stay on campus? What if I live 500 miles away or something? Takes all that away. Not only that, Elijah, but at that point, with all the games, and look, if you're watching, the networks don't care. As long as you're watching and there's eyeballs, then they're good, But to put more of a focus on the championship games during a weekend where a lot of folks are at home might actually be beneficial to championship game viewing. I don't know. How many people are – look, if you want to watch, you're going to watch. The networks, as you well know, sir, they're not concerned about guys like you and me and about the bulk of our audience listening right now.
No.
They know you're going to watch. They want the more casual viewer. And the more casual viewer may be at a holiday party on December the 9th or 10th or whatever, whenever they have championship game. You know what I mean? Or whatever
right.
weekend that is, right? Or out shopping.
First Saturday in December.
Yeah, out getting their Christmas tree, whatever. Again, guys like you and me, we're tuned in. And like, hey, I'll get the tree some other time. I don't know. So.
That's exactly how I sound.
Right. So not a bad idea. I'm all for that one. I'm all for that. And let's go ahead and start playing with a week or so left in August. I know it's hot, but you know what, y'all? It's hot in a lot of places until like October. It just is. It just is.
What's the difference between for 1 week?
Nothing. Not around here, man.
Because I was I went to go cover that game against Old Dominion and the last Saturday in August, and guess what I still did then? Sweated through my shirt.
Yes.
Still.
Yes.
Just walk into the stadium.
Add another round of home games to the college football playoff, he says. Expansion feels inevitable, Scott writes, but whether the bracket grows to 14 or 16, the action can begin earlier in December as a result of the other tweaks to the fall calendar. First-round matchups would take place on the first weekend of December on home campuses. National quarterfinals take place on the third weekend, also on campus. 2 bowls will stage the national semifinals. And then that takes him into saying, so the other bowls would then go back to being their bowl games. And you would have that. And then you rotate accordingly the way we were doing for the first iteration of the college football playoff. And they would still have some level of meaning. Now, one thing where I might disagree a little, I don't know how you feel, Scott says that maybe some of the losers of the first round games would then go to these bowl games. I'm for that in theory. In practice, I don't know how those schools, coaches, et cetera, may feel about something like that. Or other schools may say, well, hey, wait a minute now. Why do they get 2 games in the postseason? That might be something of a rub. I'm not sure. Again, in theory, I'd be fine with that because I think you could still get a good matchup and they'd have time to prepare. I don't know if the opt-outs for teams like that would be even stronger, considering that they had already played a postseason game and they had lost said postseason game.
But then you'd be pairing teams that are in the same boat, right?
Yeah.
Like you would be playing, like one of the examples they use would be Tennessee, Indiana, and the Rose Bowl.
Right.
In that story.
Right.
Tennessee and Indiana would be in the same boat. You have a lot of opt-outs both ways, but there's no competitive advantage one way or the other between the two teams in that game. You get some finality. You get to do the whole bowl experience, and you get additional practices, which I think they would every coach in college football would take.
Yeah, and he calls it a New Year's Day festival. He says this year's semifinals will be staged at the Orange and Cotton. If a bowl festival this year consisted of 8 teams, it would include South Carolina, Miami at the Peach, SMU, Alabama at the Sugar, Clemson, Ole Miss in the Fiesta, and Indiana, Tennessee in the Rose. That'd be fun. And I'd love
Perfect.
I'd love Carolina and Miami to play, man.
That would have been really fun. That would have been a lot of fun.
That'd be great.
Even if just for a half, Lenore
Yeah.
Sellers v. Cam Ward would have been really cool.
That'd have been all right. All right. A couple other quick ones that we'll get to on this, and we'll incorporate that into a drive around the SEC. A couple of things going on in Austin, Texas. That's part of the drive around coming up.
Ah, yes. If you're listening to this station right now, you probably know ball. I know you know ball because you guys call in and text in all the time. You know what you're talking about. My friends over at Prize Picks can help you cash in on that ball knowing knowledge. Look, it's very easy to play. Download the app and press or select more or less on at least 2 players and their stat projections, and you can win up to 100 times your cash. Look, you can even get in on college football playoff action coming up here this week because there's some massive games. You think Matthew Golden's going to get more or less than 65.5 receiving yards? Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State been tearing it up. All you got to do is pick more or less on him for 84.5 receiving yards. And you know what? I might go less. Texas secondary, pretty good. You can do whatever you want. Just download the app today. Use promo code 1075GAME and get $50 instantly after you place your first $5 lineup. Again, promo code 1075GAME. Prize Picks. Run your game. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one accident that's got 2 lanes completely blocked, both the outside lanes blocked on 77 northbound just after the Percival Road exit 15. Some more minor traffic backups as a result of accidents are on Fontaine Road at US 1 and 2 Notch Road, Gadsden Street at Lady Street, I-26 eastbound at South Carolina 773 next to exit 82, Platte Springs Road at South Lake Drive, Sparkleberry Lane at Viking Drive, 2 Notch Road between Richard Bonham Drive and Muddy Springs Road, and lastly, one on US 378 near Peachland Drive.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. We start with some news out of Austin. Athletics Director Chris Del Conte very unhappy with reports suggesting that Steve Sarkisian will be one of the hotter names for for openings in the National Football League. And now we know there are 6 with the Raiders firing Antonio Pierce today. Now, the difference for Sark, in my opinion, look, for one thing, they're still playing. And NFL teams can be patient. This isn't like college where you got to go recruiting right away. In the NFL, they'll be more than happy to wait, just like they would if they were going to wait for a coordinator of a playoff team, et cetera, et cetera. So really, if you think about it, Sark is in the same boat as a lot of those guys. Chris Del Conte, by the way, and Adam Schefter reported this, right? He was asked about what by Kirk Bowles of the Houston Chronicle, who's the Texas beat writer and one of the best in the business. Del Conte said, quote, "We've got a game to play. I'm not going to comment. Somebody's just creating fodder before our biggest game. That's stupid." Well, it's not just somebody. It's Adam Schefter.
He's pretty well sourced.
He is, and I don't think. Listen, Adam Schefter doesn't need a Steve Sarkisian rumor to get clicks, right? Texas fans can be mad, and Chris Del Conte can be mad. I am personally of the belief, and I believe you are as well, sir, that if Shefty is getting this, it's because someone's told him, there's some interest in Sark. Why wouldn't there be?
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly,
done a hell of a job.
Yeah, he really has, man. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I told you this morning. I didn't have this level of expectation for him. I know they did. And I know there's been some things in his life that derailed his first head coaching opportunities, so I'm not here to hold that against him. I just really felt like the pressure cooker that is Texas football was the kind of job where his personality wasn't going to be able to succeed. Not his coaching acumen, his personality, that maybe a lot of people go in there, and for lack of a better word, man, they just get bullied. Right? There's
a lot of cooks in that.
There are, man. There are. And that's why I think Mac Brown excelled, because Mac was able to handle that, and really he's the only person in the modern era that's been able to handle it with any modicum of true success. I mean, Mac played for 2 national titles. How many other national titles has Texas been playing for before or since, right? But now here we are. I've been very impressed. And not only that, but as soon as they hired Sark and they knew they were coming into the SEC, I want to say a little bit ironically, the best thing he's done is give them a Southeastern Conference and national championship caliber defense. And that's not what he's known for. That being said, if I'm Shad Khan, and that one job I'm talking about right now, if I'm Shad Khan, I might throw a literal boat at Steve Sarkisian, in addition to a mega salary, because you've got an amazing quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I like what Doug Peterson can do, but they didn't. And maybe, look, it could be.
He might have lost the room. It feels like they probably lost the room.
I mean, it could be organizational from Mr. Khan on down. Could not. I'm not really sure, because a couple of years ago, they surprised a bunch of us and played for an AFC championship. Don't know how they did it, but they found a way to do it. But with Trevor Lawrence down there and Steve Sarkisian's abilities, I could see that one, but I don't like that Chris Del Conte would say somebody's just creating fodder. I do not believe that is what's happening here. I think Chris should be proud of the fact that his head coach is thought of like that. That's my opinion.
Especially considering when Shefty gets stuff, I mean, a lot of that, I would be willing to say more than half of the stuff that he gets in terms of his sources are agents.
Sure.
Agents all the time, whether it be in football, basketball, baseball, whoever the main source newsbreaker is in those sports, have really close relationship with agents. And sometimes those agents will reach out and say, hey, my guy is getting a lot of attention from the NFL, because you know what happens after that? price of that contract goes up.
It does. But let me ask you this, because I'm with you, and we can blend the real with the kind of, dare I say, cynical in something like that, because you're 100% right. And we talk about Bruce Feldman and Stuart Mandel and Andy Staples all the time, and the college guys, being the first to break, Pete Thamel, to break a lot of those national stories. And they get it from the agent. But is there, and I think the answer is yes, but is there truth as well? Let's just say Adam has spoken with Sark's agent, and we're being hypothetical.
Yes.
Is the agent fielding calls from the Bears, the Jags, the Pats? Hey, seriously, would your guy be interested? Like, are we going to waste our time in wanting to talk with him about our gig, or should we move on?
Because they're forming candidate pools.
Right.
That's essentially what's happening with a lot of these NFL jobs. They are forming their pool of candidates, and they will interview 5 to 6, 7 people for the opening, right? And when that happens, you're getting the range of what you can do. I mean, a lot of times teams will be like, hey, can we go into the college ranks, and would this work? Would this person even be interested first off, right? Like, there are many stages to this, to hiring a coach in general, whether it's someone who is not in coaching in the NFL right now, someone like a Mike Vrabel, or somebody, who is in the college ranks like a Steve Sarkisian. Like, there's a lot of different levels to gauging interest and formulating a pool of candidates that you'll eventually choose from later, but you got to narrow that number down first.
I mean, look, if I'm Sark, I'm staying at Texas. I've got a good thing going. I'm well paid 2 years in a row. I've been in the college football playoff semifinal. Of course, last year it was just a Final Four, but this year you've won your games and you're moving on. You're a heavy underdog in your home state against Ohio State, but hey, you got to go play the football game. And to kind of blend the second part of this story here now, there have been whispers that, even though Arch Manning last week said, I'll be back, there is some concern that if Sark leaves, that Arch would not. And are you having a conversation with Ewers, no matter, look, if Texas were to win the national championship with Quinn Ewers at the helm and he's got his year left, he's coming back, right? And you believe Arch Manning when he says he wants to do it too. But at that point, Arch would only have 1 year to play as Texas starter if he's as good as people think he is before he would move on to the NFL. So there's a couple of interesting dynamics at play in Austin. But I don't think that Chris Del Conte is right when he said it's somebody creating fodder. I think Steve Sarkisian is a legitimate candidate. But if I were him, again, I'd be looking at a place where you've got a quarterback. And like right now in New Orleans, you don't.
Nope.
Right now in who else has in Vegas, you don't.
Nope.
But you do in New England.
Mm-hmm.
You think you do in Chicago.
You're not going to give up on him.
You're not yet. Yeah. Not yet. But you got one in Jacksonville.
Yeah. They signed him for enough money.
He's on his second deal. I mean, they and he is. He's good.
Really good.
Yeah, he's good. He's really good. So it's just it's something to think about. Continuing our drive around the SEC, Tennessee football gets a big pickup. Amari Jefferson, wide receiver from Alabama, will be heading home, if you will, to play for the Tennessee Volunteers. He went to Baylor and played for our good friend Eric Kimry. Didn't see time last year at Bama. And a fresh start coming, but several guys that he's either played with or against in high school or on the Vols roster. When he announced, I think it was one of those, like, what's the prediction machine they have at On3?
Their crystal ball.
I think it went straight to 100% Tennessee, even though there were some other schools that were
vying for his services.
Yeah, they were out there. It was like 100% Tennessee. So I think maybe when he might have told somebody something.
I think so. Or he probably had some people back home who were talking.
Yeah. And real quick, hoops tonight. We got Auburn at Texas. Should be good. Kentucky at Georgia. State at Vandy. LSU at Missouri. And Tennessee at Florida.
I mean,
Gators are favored, man.
Yeah. I mean, Florida in a loss. I agree with Gary Parrish, who said in his podcast, I was almost as impressed with Florida as anybody in the country, despite the loss. Putting up 100 at Rupp is hard, man. That team can score. That's the drive around the SEC. Elijah has a little fun for us for our Valentine's Day
idea coming up. All right, welcome back into the postgame show. Final few minutes on this Tuesday. Coming up as soon as we're done here in Columbia, special edition of Carolina Calls with Coach Dawn Staley and Brad Muller. Again, tough news today. South Carolina learning that Columbia forward Ashlyn Watkins is done for the season with a torn ACL. That's a tough one. But, again, one day probably expected in the short term. Now it'll just be the entire season. But Coach Dawn will have updates on how they'll be handling this coming up for you in just a little bit. One final word on Scott Dockerman's piece from The Athletic, to go back to something we were talking about a half hour ago. On just improving the 12-month college football calendar. We talked about, again, more games on campus for the CFP is one of them, and then return 4 of the 6, New Year's 6 bowls back to being, actual bowl games as opposed to name only. Again, I've even said, like the CFP sites this week, they can call them whatever they want. One game is in Miami and one game is in Dallas. I'll call it the Orange Bowl if they want me to, and I'll call it the Cotton Bowl if they want me to, because they do want me to.
It's more fun that way.
Yeah, but it's not the bowl game. It's not. But he says tier the other bowls so that the bowl system can continue. He said he'd pool the tiers to ensure quality teams and matchups, and maybe even a mini tournament. Again, I like these ideas, but especially what I like is moving the calendar up in terms of moving the schedule up in terms of starting the season. Maybe the second to or last week of August, moving spring ball to the end of the May semester, whenever that, again, you can figure it out for your school. Most kids are on campus anyway. And just, figuring out a few ways to make this more logistically possible, I think, across the country. I like it. Check it out at The Athletic and see what you think. Might like to get Scott on the show at some time here in the not-too-distant future and discuss more of this, because I think some things have to give at some point. This is just it's just way too crowded in December right now with what they're trying to do, and I don't think it's good for a lot of people. And we'll see what some of the numbers say too, like viewership-wise. And we've seen ticket sales have not been great.
No, but viewership on TV.
Viewership's good. Yeah, viewership's good. So finally, we come back around to a little Carolina baseball, sort of indirectly. We mentioned that Ethan Petrie has been named a preseason All-America to the surprise of no one. He's a fantastic player. And that Carolina opens the regular season on Valentine's Day against Sacred Heart. And that just led us, obviously we're kidding around here, to say, what you need to have is like the Cheez-It, like the Citrus Bowl. So, that couple got married last week. Many of you were there and you saw it.
Legitimate.
And he was on TV if you didn't, go to the game itself. That was a legit wedding, with a big Cheez-It guy. And
was an ordained minister in that mascot costume.
That's cool, man. Like, good, and even if it was, I hope that the Cheez-It guy just went to wherever you go to, sit in the divinity school class and get you.
Well, I hope he did it in the outfit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. If you're doing it, do it. But, how crazy is that Sacred Heart on Valentine's Day? So we said you need to have, like, a big, like, any Gamecock fans, plural. Like, not a contest. Just call Carolina and say, we want to get married on the field. Like, you should do that on Valentine's Day against Sacred Heart. And I said, what other schools might be apropos for Valentine's Day? Now, if this were a podcast,
where we didn't have to abide by some FCC rules and regulations.
If this were a podcast, we had a few, but it's not a podcast, and we try to be family-oriented here, so we had to exclude a few schools.
Oh, man. And if you can guess what schools those are, and you're the first one to tweet it at me, I will Venmo you $10.
But all I could come up with that was really good, like UIC, University of Illinois Chicago, they're the Flames.
That's good.
That's
a good one.
Flames. Yeah. Your flame. And then you've got a couple.
I got a couple. Virginia, because Virginia's for lovers.
Okay. Just,
there's a theme that you can go there.
Yeah.
Dayton.
The Flyers?
Dayton, but also
Dayton, I get it. Okay.
apostrophe, like you're Dayton,
Okay.
We started Dayton against Dayton. Like that's one
I see what you did there.
That is
I see what you did there.
An angle. St. Mary's. Getting married at the St. Mary's game.
Okay.
An angle.
Yeah. Well, we got a few Saints, right? St. Bonnie's at that.
Yeah.
St. Bonaventure.
There's some Saints there. LaSalle, because they're the explorers, exploring for love.
Look at that.
Love is an exploration, and finding it sometimes can be a very eventful exploration.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep working on that. But again, there were a few that were good, but you'll have to go find them yourself. And
like all great things, can be found in the Ohio Valley Conference. If you know, you know.
Dawn Staley, Brad Muller coming up next. We'll see you all tomorrow. So long.